In this video, we're going to have a look at how do we calculate the volume of a composite shape. Now, to calculate the volume of a composite shape, and remember a composite shape is a shape that involves two or more other shapes, the first step is going to be to break up the composite shape into smaller identifiable shapes. After you've broken it up into those smaller individual identifiable shapes, you calculate the volume of each of those individual shapes. The third step, once you've calculated the individual volumes, is add them all together to calculate the volume of the composite shape. So let's have a look at some examples of how do we calculate the volume of composite shapes. In the first example, I want to calculate the volume of the composite shape shown. So the first step is going to be break that shape into smaller shapes. So for this shape, I can break it into two smaller shapes. I can break it into the semi-cylinder on the top of the shape, and I can break it into the rectangular prism down the bottom. So to calculate the total volume, I need to calculate the volume of the semi-cylinder and the rectangular prism. So I'm going to call my semi-cylinder shape A and my rectangular prism shape B. So the volume of shape A is going to equal pi r squared times the height divided by 2. Now the radius of my semi-cylinder is going to be 12 divided by 2, which is equal to 6 centimeters. And I need to do that because they have given me what would be the diameter of the cylinder and not the radius. So I need to divide the diameter by 2 to calculate the radius. And the height of the semi-cylinder is going to be 35 centimeters. So now that I have those two values, I can substitute them into my formula. So the volume of A is going to be pi times 6 squared times 35. And then I'm going to divide that by 2. So completing my numerator, putting it into my calculator, that's going to equal 3,958.41 divided by 2. So the volume of A is going to be 1,979.2 centimeters cubed. Now next I've got to calculate the volume of B, which is my rectangular prism, and that is going to be length times width times height. So going back to my diagram, I can identify that length is going to be 12, the width is going to be 35, and the height is going to be 20. So substituting in those values, the volume of B is going to equal 12 times 35 times 20, and that is going to equal 8,400 centimeters cubed. So now that I've got the volume of my two individual shapes, I can calculate the total volume, and that is going to equal volume of A plus the volume of B, which equals 1,979.2 plus 8,400. So the total volume of my composite shape is going to equal 10,379.2 centimeters cubed. So by breaking the shape into smaller individual parts and calculating their volumes, I can find the total volume of the shape to be 10,379.2 centimeters cubed. So let's have a look at a second example. So in the second example, I want to calculate the volume of the shape shown. So the first step I need to do is to break that into smaller individual shapes. And for this one, I can break it into a semisphere up the top and a cone down the bottom. So now that I've broken it into two separate shapes, I can label those shape A for the semisphere and shape B for the cone, and calculate their individual volumes. So volume of A is going to equal to 4/3 times pi radius cubed. And because it's a semisphere, I need to divide that by 2. Now to complete that calculation, I need to identify the radius. And the radius of my semisphere is going to be 3.5. So radius is equal to 3.5 centimeters. So substituting that into my formula is going to equal 4/3 times pi times 3.5 cubed. And I'm dividing that by 2 because it's a semisphere. So using the calculator to calculate my numerator, it is equal to 179.59 divided by 2. So the volume of A, my semisphere, is 89.8 centimeters cubed. So now that I've calculated the volume of A, I can calculate the volume of B, which is my cone. So volume of B is equal to 1/3 pi r squared times the height. Now to use that formula, I need the radius and the height. The radius is going to be the same as the semisphere, so 3.5 centimeters. My height is going to be from the tip of my cone to the base of the cone, which is equal to 10 centimeters. So substituting in those values, 1/3 times pi times 3.5 squared times by 10, and that is going to equal 128.28 centimeters cubed. So now that I've calculated the volume of shape A and B, I can find the volume of the composite shape by adding them together. So total volume is equal to volume of A plus the volume of B, which equals 89.8 plus 128.28. So my total volume is equal to 218.08 centimeters cubed. So there are a couple of examples of how we can calculate the volume of a composite shape by breaking them down and then adding each individual component together.